eyelids leapt open as his nose choked on the sharp, acrid smell of burning plastic. Knowing immediate danger when he smelt it, and sensory overload when he experienced it, he tried to get a grip on the rapidly rising panic that his lizard brain was inducing. He looked around wildly through the chaos, trying to assess the situation. Alarms and warning sirens filled his ears. Instrument panels sparked and sputtered. The smoke and the blinking danger lights gave the cramped space the look of a hellish disco. Through the porthole, a calm beam of sunshine pierced the smoke and the darkness. His eyes landed on the beam. He was able to orient himself in the cabin. The steady voice of the ship's computer calmly made its pronouncement. "Please evacuate the capsule." He quickly came to the conclusion that his time and spaceship continuum must have crash-landed on some unknown planet. "Well, that's a fine kick in the ass," he said to himself as he realized that he was up to his knees in water. The ship was sinking rapidly. Each and every one of the inflatable flotation gizmos that were specially designed to keep the stupid spacecraft floating in just such an event had obviously failed to deploy. The computer made a most welcome announcement. "Atmosphere capable of supporting life." His rigorous training kicked in as he unstrapped his safety restraints and reached for the lever that would blow the capsule door. The door blew. It arced through the air and landed with a splash. Sunlight and fresh air and fresh water flooded the cabin. It was a beautiful day. Filling his lungs with fresh air, he was able to regain his composure and reassess his situation. Looking about the rest of the capsule, it was apparent his fellow space travelers had not survived the trip. He winced at the sight of his deceased colleagues.
Self-destruct sequence activated.
The perky, synthesized voice chip chirped. 3 minutes until vaporization. Something had tripped the self-destruct mechanism. Believing that 3 minutes was plenty of time, Chuck quickly grabbed his kit bag, his seat cushion, which also acted as a flotation device, and his inflatable life vest. His spaceman ray gun, much to his chagrin, was secure in the gun locker right in front of his face. 2 minutes until vaporization. There was not going to be enough time to enter the required information into the required fields in order to unlock his weapon. He could see it, but he could not get to it. Waiting times. He punched at the plastic glass that stood in his way. Fuck, he swore. He really wanted his gun. He waded over to the hatch and stepped up on its lid. Water poured up and over his time shoes and into the capsule. He looked down. Damn it, those were my favorite time shoes. They were indeed some really nice time shoes. He blinked and squinted into the bright sunlight. He felt its warmth on his stubbled cheeks. He shielded his eyes from the sun. He scanned the horizon, noting the direction of land. He paused momentarily and said something somber and clever towards his deceased dead co-workers in regard to their imminent burial at sea. Goodbye, my captain. Lest he be sucked into the undertow from the sinking ship, or caught up in the vaporization, he jumped clear. He began swimming and kicking furiously away. 1 minute until vaporization. Bolts of electricity crackled around the skin of the sinking capsule. As the space machine submerged, the water sizzled and boiled, and steam bellowed skyward. The computer voice burbled as it went under. 30 blub blub seconds glug glug. 29 seconds later, the ship imploded. As the machine destroyed itself, it produced an awesome shockwave that rolled over the water's surface. The 3-foot swell lifted him up and set him down. It did not move him forward in the least. He paddled and kicked and kicked and paddled until he could paddle and kick no more. He made it to the beach. He pulled himself up onto the land, sucking for air. He blacked out. There was no turning back. Remember his dream. A smile crept across his face. He felt the warmth of the day on his closed eyelids. A slight breeze caressed his skin. He was unsure to where he was. Was he still in deep suspension on the ship? He did know that if he was experiencing this level of consciousness, that the ship was approaching its destination and bringing him online. Slowly he opened his eyes. He knew in a flash that he was no longer in space. Looking about, he found himself surrounded by humanoids. They looked like hippies. They were hairy all over and seemed to have no shame. They seemed to be unable to speak coherently, and they smelled terrible. The tribe welcomed the lost man into their fold. Chuck had hoped these savages might treat him like a god. But it was not to be. Instead, they treated him with a kindness usually reserved for idiots or children. He spent several days tagging along, joining them in eating nuts and berries and squirrels and other small mammals. He was convinced one of their females was checking him out. If this was going to be his new life on this strange new world, he definitely wanted to get laid. The tribe members' animal skin loincloths left little to the imagination. The women bared their breasts as if they were just another body part. There were worse planets to be stranded on, he thought. On one fine day, as they made their way through the jungle, Chuck stopped to take a dump. The tribe continued down the trail. If nothing else, this new diet was keeping him regular. Chuck was on his haunches, defecating several feet off the path when there appeared to be a hubbub at the front of the foraging expedition. He was cursing the lack of toilet paper on this otherwise serviceable planet when he noticed the commotion. He finished wiping his ass with some leaves, which he hoped were not poisonous. No sooner had he pulled up his pants, he heard what sounded like a stampede. Several of the hippies ran back past Chuck in the direction from which they had come. The tribe vocalized fear as they ran by, being chased by who know what. Within seconds, Chuck had been scooped up in a net and was being dragged along the ground. After a short but bruising drag along the jungle floor, he found himself being released from the net. He and his fellow captives were surrounded by fierce, small horses, snorting through their nostrils and kicking up dirt at them. Attracted by his strange, tattered spaceman garb, two members of the hunting party came up to him. They reached out and touched the odd fabric. Chuck snarled at them. "Get your dirty hooves off me, you stinking ponies!" The ponies in the hunting party were stunned. Never before had they heard a human talk, let alone accuse them of smelling. With their superior pony strength and numbers, the pony soldiers quickly subdued the struggling man. They attached a massive yoke around his shoulders. He was chained to the other human captives and led down the trail to New Pony City. Marching him through the jungle, the ponies taunted him. "Do it again," they said. "Say something," as they poked him with sticks. "You smell," said another, fanning the air with a hoof. Shackled, Chuck decided to shut the fuck up and uttered not another word. Shackled and naked in the lab, Chuck listened as the pony scientists, wearing pony lab coats, went about discussing his imminent vivisection. "We must cut him open and find out what makes him talk," said Dr. Zaius. "I want his brain." "Let's cut his balls off." "Maybe we should keep him a while and experiment on him while he's alive before dissecting his brain," said Zira, a lone voice of Pony Reason. "We could still cut his balls off." "We will discuss this tomorrow," said Dr. Zaius, who was famous for putting off important workplace discussions. They all left the lab and headed home to their stalls. That evening, Zira came back to the lab to check on the human prisoner. Dr. Zira glanced at Chuck through the bars with a gaze both tender and curious. She had never looked at a human in such a way before. apprehension and trans-species lust aroused, Dr. Zira approached the cage. They longingly looked into each other's eyes. She stepped closer. He reached out with his arm and stroked her muzzle. She rubbed her muzzle on his arm. Trembling, her pony muzzle lips, pink and moist, moved towards the man's stubbled man muzzle as his moved towards hers. Their interspecies tongues intertwined. Chuck almost gagged on his pony lover's huge, wet pony tongue. He felt her equine teeth on his cheeks. He had his whole face in her mouth, and he was loving it. Pony saliva poured down his neck. His nipples hardened. His fingers became enmeshed in her silky mane. He tightly hugged her muscular neck and pulled her towards him through the bars. It was at this moment that he burst awake from his dream. His heart was beating heavily, and he was soaked in sweat. He had a huge erection that he had been rubbing on Jane, his wife. Jane, already nudged awake by his magnificent manhood, took a firm and steady grip of his studly saddle horn and positioned herself reverse cowgirl style upon it. Not caring whether it was a piss hard on or not, she rode it for all it was worth. Married people with kids should always get it while they can, she reminded herself. As the sun's rays entered the room, joined at the junk like that, sliding up and down on the old disco stick. Jane really loved her life and her husband. She went through her mental to-do checklist for the day as she approached her first orgasm. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Meanwhile, breathing heavily, Chuck could not let go of the image of Dr. Zira's big anime eyes and long pony eyelashes. The sexy pony lipstick, her sexy pony lips, and that lab coat all remained vivid in his mind. He wrapped his fingers in his wife's long hair, pretending that it was his dream lover's silky mane. He imagined what it might be like being belly to belly, making love with a pony. He had spent a lot of time trying to visualize the mechanics of how it might work. He watched his wife's ass bouncing up and down as he envisioned he was fucking